Number 1. Jumping and casting. So this is a very small tip, but it's extremely useful in PvP. In Wildstar you cannot cast and then jump. It will interrupt your spell casting. But what you can do is jump first and then start casting. And why this is useful? Well, it's very useful and very important to keep in mind when you're kiting your enemies. Because what you can do, for example, if you semi-low HP and you have an enemy chasing you in PvP, you want to let him think that you're running away. You're just running away, but then suddenly you can jump in the air, start casting, turn around, and boom, shoot him. He was thinking that you're just running away, so he will have a very little time to react to your spell and very little time to actually dodge it. And actually he will have a very little time to realize not to sprint so he doesn't get dazed. So that is an extremely useful tip for kiting. It might seem very small on paper, but trust me, when you try it out in PvP you will understand that it's actually really good. Let's move on to number 2. Number 2. Sprinting in combat. It's really bad, don't do it unless you do it smartly. So in combat, if you are sprinting and you get damaged, you will get dazed. And the daze will slow your movement speed drastically, and it will remove all of your endurance. And endurance is what you need to sprint in the first place. So those combined are pretty bad because first, let's say you're in a PvP fight and you're sprinting, a melee is attacking you, you get slowed down, so you can't run away from the melee. And even after the slow, you cannot even sprint because the sprint, all your endurance is gone. So getting caught by a daze in a PvP fight can literally lose you the whole fight. So you need to be extremely careful when to use it. And if you use it smartly, it can be a very big advantage, but you need to be extremely careful with it. Let me just show you how it looks. So here I'm sprinting and boom, I'm dazed. Look how slow I am. Sprinting, and now I'm dazed. So slow. Imagine if I have a melee character on my ass in PvP. That will be just brutal. But one thing to keep in mind is that most of the classes have some type of abilities or amps to fight against daze. For example, as a spell slinger, I have this. Dashing restores 33% endurance and grants immunity to daze for 2 seconds. So the way I'm kiting as my spell slinger, for example, is using a dash, which gives me 2 seconds of immunity to daze, and then sprinting. And when this goes off, I stop sprinting, so I don't get dazed. Warrior, for example, has total immunity to daze, so they can sprint all the time, which is really good for them. And yeah, basically every class has something related to daze, so you have to look at your class and look at your amps and look at your abilities and find out if there's something that counters the daze. But yeah, that's pretty much it about daze, and let's move on to number 3. Number 3, hold to cast. Isn't it annoying to just spam your basic ability over and over again until you get carpal tunnel and you can't even fap anymore? Sure, I can use my other hand, but I like to have a threesome. So yeah, for people like me, Wildstar has an option, and that option is called hold to cast. Oh my god, this makes your life so much easier. The only thing you have to do is just hold the button down and it will recast automatically. This is definitely something you should try get used to from the get-go when you start playing Wildstar. Yeah, this was a pretty small tip, and let's move on to number 4. Number 4, interrupt armor. So listen up carefully guys, shit just got real. This is hands down my most important advice for you guys. So listen carefully. Interrupt armor. What is it? How does it work? How does it interact? So let's start with this guy. This guy has 2 interrupt armor. And the interrupt armor mechanism is all over the game. It's in raids, dungeons, adventures, PvP, BGs, arenas. It's literally everywhere, so it's extremely important for you to actually learn this mechanism. It's hands down the #1 cause of death in dungeons, low level dungeons, and maybe even veteran dungeons. So it's really important to learn. As you can see here, this guy has 2 interrupt armor. This means that if I want to stun this mob, I need to use 2 CC abilities to break these interrupt armors first to make him vulnerable to an actual stun. So let's say I was in a party, we will have 2 guys using their stun first, and then the 3rd guy's stun will actually apply on the enemy. And a really good tip I can give you, especially in dungeons, is just keep an eye on the boss's interrupt armor. Most of the time they will have infinite amount of interrupt armors, which means that the boss cannot be stunned at that specific time. But when a phase come up where the boss needs to be actually stunned, usually the interrupt armor will change from infinite amount to something like 2 or 3. And as soon as you see that happen, you pretty much know that you need to stun the boss. You pretty much know that this is a phase where I need to stun the boss. So 9 times out of 10, if you see his interrupt armor changing from infinite to an actual number, you can just right away stun the boss and you will have done your job 9 times out of 10. There's some specific times where some bosses open up their interrupt armor even though stun is not really necessary, but like I said, 9 times out of 10, if you see the interrupt armor becoming a number and you stun, you will have done your job right. And yeah, that's just my single most important advice for you guys. When you are in a dungeon, just have your boss as a target so you can see his HP bar and you can see his interrupt armor, and just keep an eye on the interrupt armor. When it changes to a number, boom, stun. And that's gonna save you from a lot of wipes in dungeons, I guarantee you that. And the same thing works in PvP. If you want to hot CC a healer, keep in mind that he might have an interrupt armor, so you don't waste your stun. You might want to wait until the interrupt armor is gone or break it with something else. So yeah, this is a really, I cannot stress enough how important this mechanism is and how important it is to learn it. And yeah, that's pretty much it about interrupt armor. I can actually show you. I have a skill that breaks 2 interrupt armor and I have a stun after that. So I can show you, look at the interrupt armor. I'm going to use my #6 skill, which will remove both of his interrupt armor, and I will stun him after that. Look at the interrupt armors. Boom, they're removed, and now he's stunned. So yeah, that's how it works. I hope you guys try to learn it, and I hope this was helpful for you guys. And let's move on to last and #5 tip. #5, Breakout gameplay / Wildstar's unique CCs. So it was kinda hard to get footage out of all the CCs in Wildstar, so I'm gonna try my best to explain them to you and explain the Breakout gameplays. And basically Breakout gameplay is a mechanism that allows you to break CCs off you without using an actual trinket. So I'm just gonna list the CCs and how to break out of them. Stun. The way you break out of stun is that you get WASD on your screen and one of those keys will be highlighted. And you have to hold that skill or spam that skill to get out of the stun faster. The next CC is Disarm. Disarm will physically throw the weapon out of your hands, and you have to physically run to your weapon to actually get it back. The other way is just waiting until the Disarm CC timer is off and then you get your weapon back. But most of the time running to it is faster. Tether. Tether is a unique CC to Wildstar, and it basically summons a post. That post has a rope attached to it, and the other side of the rope will be attached to your character, and it will prevent your character to moving a certain distance away from the post. The way to get out of this CC is to breaking the post, which will break the rope off your character and make your character free again. Next CC is blind, and blind works uniquely in Wildstar. It basically makes your whole screen black except a little portion of your screens in the middle. So you can basically turn your camera like I'm doing right now to see a little bit better, to see where's your enemy, where's your friends and whatnot. But you can barely see. But I think it's a very unique CC, and it works exactly how it's named. You're blind. So yeah, I really like it. The next CC is knockdown. Basically it works like any other MMORPG, you just knock down. But Wildstar has a breakout for it. And the breakout is using your dash. So it's always a good idea to try to save one dash token. So if you happen to get knocked down, you're instantly ready to get out of it. And this is especially useful in PvP. Always try to keep one dash token, so if you get knocked down by a warrior or esper, you can get out of it right away. Next and last CC that has a breakout gameplay is Disorient. Disorient basically shuffles your movement keys, and you have to figure out which does which. Basically a W can become your left strafe, your S can become your right strafe, your A can become your forward movement, your D can become your backwards movement. So the only breakout gameplay for Disorient is just quickly learning which key does what. And yeah, we still have two CCs, but those doesn't have a breakout gameplay. The first one is Root, and it's by far one of the most powerful CCs in Wildstar, because as you know, Wildstar is about aiming skills. So if you're rooted and you have 5 guys aiming at you and you cannot dodge, it's pretty brutal. And the last CC that Wildstar has, and you cannot CC break or like breakout gameplay, is Snare. Snare works like other MMORPGs. You have a reduced movement speed, and there's no breakout for it. You're just slower. And yeah, that was pretty much it with breakout gameplay and all the CCs. And keep in mind that CCs and breakout gameplay especially is really important in Wildstar. Like you will have wipes and deaths in dungeons and raids just because you didn't break out of one CC. So you really need to learn how to break out of every single CC and be ready to do it in dungeon raids, and especially in PvP too. Alright, that's it guys. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing, and I'll see you in the next video.